Welcome to Cover My Ass, an improvisational literary critique podcast where baffling books are reviewed but not read by yours truly. I'm Khaki.
Hi, and I'm Kay, and remember, we only judge a book by its cover.
And we find ourselves once more among the towering stacks of your library. Now, you've selected something cracking for us today, so can you tell us more about it?
Yes, it's a book which I completely forgot to actually take off the shelf.
Let's go take it off the shelf. Doop, 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 doop. Coming off the shelf now. It's coming down here. Oh, yes, it's called Dagger's Point.
Yes, that's it.
Dagger's Point by, what does it say here? Anne Logston.
Anne Logston.
Should we try this one again?
Yes, let's. It's Dagger's Point by Anne Logston, and it's a classic when it comes to 80s fantasy, science fiction fantasy, really.
For the readers at home, if you check your podcasting device, you should be seeing the cover right now, and otherwise you can check the show notes for a link.
Dagger.
Speaking of links...
Lynx, yes, Lynx, very good. The feline-type alien lands on planet of elfinesque humanoids.
Because she's not quite human either, is she? Which the artist has represented through the pointy ears that this tunicked young woman is not quite hiding. She's wearing a 1980s Pilates sweatband on her forehead. Yes, she could have tucked her ears under that.
Then it would have been like very much Spock in
Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
That's the one. Yeah.
No, I've never heard of it.
No,
I don't have that entire film memorized. That's Ruraf, right?
Yes, that's our main character.
That's our hunky protagonist with his. I mean, if we look closely at this image, that's rather an asymmetrical 29-pack that he's rocking there.
It is. As you can see on the cover, there is a very beefcake look to this cover.
I find myself unable to look away almost.
When I read it myself, I got an impression of him being furred all over, and this is just purely eye candy, get people to...
Oh, the glistening pecs. Yes, like, understood. Unless he's being shaved.
Ooh, it's like if you,
there was that would have been a scene, wouldn't it?
I was going to say,
they make such a point of clipping all of his nails, so many nails.
Yeah. Well,
that if this was part of his grooming,
4 in the back, 4 in the front, and then 2 paws, and like you 4 arms, and then you've got
the dew claws.
Yeah, there's a lot of grooming involved, lots of soft brushes and hard brushes and wire brushes.
And if any of that had involved shaving, then you can bet that Miss Anne Logston would have certainly regaled us with all the details of that.
Right. Also, I mean, you've seen Sphinx cats.
I've cuddled Sphinx cats.
They don't have bronzed, oiled skin. They have they're pale and white and usually hiding under a blanket.
Hiding under a blanket or cuddling up very close to you because it is so cold in Moscow.
And I never really got the point of toars. Toars? What is it? Toars or towers? I always forget.
Well, I think it's a regional thing, like soda, pop, tours, towers.
They're obviously an allusion to classical themes, but even then, I think they're just like a matter of sexual virility.
Yeah, definitely. The horse has always been a very virile symbol, and to combine that with a creature capable of speech, and then combine that with a creature capable of incredible feats of agility and predatory elegance and danger and menace and arousal. Oof, getting a little hot in the collar here. Hard to keep focusing with all of those abs. I wonder if we can maybe just tape some of those abs down so we can focus on, because Ruraf, the stranger in a strange land, is joined by the young woman. Her name is Madeline, and she's a bit of an outsider in her land as well. Like, she's not alien by any means.
Well, she's one of the living on the fringe outcast for some indeterminate reason. Well, at least at the beginning of the book. Of course, she sees the spaceship coming down and
skimming one of the proud mountains.
Well, yes, it's like any landing you can walk away from is a good one, and any one you can use a ship again is great. This was definitely not a great landing.
See, but this is interesting. It didn't occur to me until much later in the book that she was an outcast. She seemed to me like a frontierswoman who was striking out in the wilderness, who had left behind the comforts of civilization to explore the wild unknown. They describe the mountain range that might have been the rim of an old supervolcano.
Yes, and as you say, it's like the landing is clearly makes an impression on the terrain here, much to the chagrin of the local populace, who see this as a defilement of their own mountain, which causes the populace to move out of the village, or at least go on a pitchforks and torches rant, which of course then finds Madeline out in the open, and she immediately gets blamed for this occurrence, even though she's like,
as unfair as it is for the local townspeople to come and pursue her, she is sheltering an actual alien.
Oh, absolutely, yes. It starts off with the alien unconscious at first when you.
It's a bit of a meet cute, really.
It is, and I don't know. There's no questions asked about how she manages to haul him away from where she finds him, because he outweighs her by factor 2, maybe 3.
I don't think that it's completely hand-waved. Like, it's mentioned that she built this cabin herself, and it's a log cabin.
True.
And for someone to be able to do that, of her stature or anyone else's stature, like, it requires some ingenuity, so she probably has a sled that she has access to.
I haven't considered that.
No beasts of burden mentioned, of course.
Of course, it could also be that the cover artist in the pursuit of the hunkiness has also made like him almost twice as tall as she is, when in fact...
Do you think that maybe he's the size of an actual cat?
Well, that would...
You think that maybe we're supposed to... Well, that would make the scenes where she's riding on his back quite...
Yeah, that wouldn't work. But if you assume
a decent-sized pig...
If you assume his lower body to be the size of a, like a lion or so, and then his upper body would it'd be like...
Yes, exactly.
It wouldn't be much taller than a standing human, rather than she comes up to his hip.
It does make sense, because in Logston's prose it does show up that they saw eye to eye, that expression comes back several times, and she's never looking up at him, he's never looking down at her.
No, totally.
No, I agree. This artist must have been taking some liberties. This artist, by the way, is it Bob Ross? I mean, look at the brushstrokes on
the background.
Right?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen him draw humans or...
Well, I think
lynxes.
The rest might have been a paint-over job, but they might have just taken a Bob Ross original, because even the head of the lynx, that looks like a triple paint over. It doesn't.
Yes.
That doesn't look like it was drawn at the same time as the 29 and a half.
It looks like someone took a sticker of a lynx head and
exactly. Like maybe first it was a lion, and then Anne Logston changed her mind. Now it's going to be lynx.
It's hard to tell because he's actually sitting, isn't it? He's got his.
Is he on his haunches? Oh, it's hard to tell.
Got his hind.
Oh, I see. Yes. Hind paws flat.
Yeah. So he's definitely sitting. Which must be really awkward.
The spine! What does the spine do?
Oh, yeah, the spine and then the lungs. I mean, imagine how lungs, they breathe in, and where do they stop? I mean, do they go down into the humanoid torso, stomach?
A second set of lungs. What's in there then?
I know, and of course the digestive tract is just an extremely long. Is it the esophagus?
The esophagus is what it's called until it meets the stomach. Do they have just the one stomach, or do they have multiple stomachs like cows do?
He's a carnivore, so I would not assume that there's to be multiple stomachs. It has to be
Yeah, okay.
I would think that there's it maybe just goes straight down. I mean, maybe that's why he needs 29 abs to help that food moving down. Peristaltic, create the peristaltic movements.
Ooh. We only ever see him munching on squirrels and small game.
Yeah.
So, well, again, he might just be very small, and her riding him might just be fucking ridiculous. I'm going to choose to believe that he is a very small tabby lynx.
Or maybe a real lynx size, but that would be
a real lynx size.
That would be something of her riding it. It would be like one of those people on those mini bikes, which are just
Yes, no, that's great. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be for me, and you can't tell me otherwise unless you have evidence from the book, which hopefully we'll come across now that we actually have a copy sitting here next to us.
The charge into battle scenes.
But it's so great.
It would make fun because, the title of the book is Dagger's Point, so it's not like she's brandishing a claymore. It's
not a claymore. What's it called?
I think it's a glaive.
It's a glaive on a stick.
Glaives are always on a stick. That's the whole point of a glaive, yes.
I've seen Krull.
That wasn't a glaive.
They call it a glaive.
Really? Well,
yeah, it's the five-pointed thing.
I'm pretty sure that's a misnomer.
I think it's the Krebstar glaive. I thought it was like a grown-up
shuriken. You've got glaives, and you've got guisarms, and then you've got...
Oh my god, what else do you have?
Lancet is one of them, and a lucerne hammer. There's dozens of different heads that you can put on a polearm, and they all have a different name.
Wow.
Yeah, no,
Can you name some more?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, but without looking anything up, can you name some more?
One of the things that I noticed, one of them is a mystery linguistic expert, There's a little bit of showing in he's healing, obviously, and he was severely injured.
Yeah.
But still, during the unspecified period, they somehow learn how to communicate. There's no universal translators, there's nothing like that.
It's a bit of enemy mine, isn't it?
A little bit that, but it's when there's the first confrontation with the villagers that involves both Ruraf Ruraf and Madeline, he's clearly, he says a few things, and he's clearly completely understanding of the quick dialogue between.
I thought that was very interesting because it sort of cast his earlier silence as more of a taciturn attitude rather than ignorance. On the spacecraft that delivered him to this planet, they must have done some investigation prior to their arrival.
Clearly a civilization that has not invented radio transmissions yet. You can sit there in your spaceship, orbit the planet, and unless you get a telescope on the right place, it's like you're not going to see very much.
You might luck out with a Rosetta Stone, but then what would you compare it to?
Yeah,
how do you know what it sounds like?
You might see. Nowadays, if you look at from the space station, like cities are completely lit up, and you can make out the outlines of landmasses simply for places where it's lit up and where it's not. But
from orbit, how would you distinguish a campfire from some fireflies?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you'd see that from orbit.
Then again, cats have very good night vision.
And to be honest, I really like the concept of cats bouncing around in zero gravity. You've seen the video of cats in the vomit comet, and they have to go they turn into complete spinners when they just try to find out which way is up, and they just do their I'm trying to get land on my feet thing. I can just imagine if you give a cat a week to figure out, they'd be fucking amazing in zero G.
They'd be absolute athletes. Well, let's get some cats up to the ISS. I see we have a candidate right here.
Well,
the little librarianess.
She sheds like crazy, so it's that I wouldn't want to wish that upon anybody who has to clear out the air filters on the
exactly, and the CO2 scrubber.
I guess that's where the Sphinx has come back in again. Space. I guess that's where the myth of space goblins came from.
Someone put a helmet on a Sphinx cat. That's the cutest thing. With those big old eyes. I know that some people find them upsetting to look like, but I think they're utterly charming.
They're like walking testicles.
There are nicer ways to describe. I was going to call it God's creature, but no, it's certainly one of ours.
I was going to say.
And who knows, when we breed them through a few more generations of aesthetic enhancement, they'll have a 39.5-pack of abs just like Ruraf over here.
I mean, I love his pelt, and I'll remember, speaking of pelt, how many references to ear tufts are in this book?
Oh, I know.
I think it is Mrs. Logston.
I know. And
it's
well, who can blame her? She has to be a cat owner, because as a cat owner yourself, you undoubtedly recognize this where you... Yes, exactly, where you... on the tips of their ears.
Absolutely. It doesn't happen in the book, but you can see there's certain scenes where there's her fingers are itching and she wants to go stroke over his hair and scratch his ears, and
because she very conscientiously avoids the traditional trope of a romantic subplot. There is tension. There are two people in intense situations, isolated from their civilization, with no one to depend upon except each other. But it doesn't automatically descend into romantic dependence. There's a very strong friendship that is earned and tested,
despite the whole sexual connotations that towers, in the traditional Greco-Roman tradition have. There's a few allusions to desires.
Oh, she's a hot-blooded woman, and he's a hot-blooded cat man.
There's definitely the whole her waking up between his paws and.
Oh, by which you mean she's lying against his belly? She's not.
Right. Yes.
Okay. No. Okay.
You've read the book.
Just making sure that.
Wow. I gave it to you on Thursday, wasn't it?
Sure.
We're recording this on Sunday, by the way, so it's...
I'm a speed reader.
I know.
But it's Ruraf who decides that he won't suffer the coward's fate. He won't be hidden. He won't lie about his presence.
Well, there's also that he has to get, after they cart off what's left of his ship, and he realizes that he is stranded on this planet, and he still has his assignment to take care of. He does have to go and get back to the communications gear that has been hauled away as a trophy we call it. Their holy mountain got defiled. The thing that the defiled thing must be taken back, and that's why they find it in the temple, of course.
See, I think that the Chief Templar, what was his name? Mari. The Chief Templar is going to be a more significant character, or would have been a more significant character had this series continued, because there is specific mention about how much he personally hoards the various artifacts that have come off this craft. Yes, exactly.
No, they said how the whole sub-chapter about him hunting down the scavengers.
Exactly.
The local lads who made off with a few things, and how they are... I think
He's extremely possessive of it.
Yeah, and I think it's also an easy shot to show of his ruthlessness, how ruthless he is towards anybody who crosses him without actually having to inflict that on the main characters. So if you put it on a few throwaway street rats who made it off with a piece of technology who meet a rather gruesome fate at the hands of Mari.
And not, as you would think, at Ruraf, who, considering his penchant for squirrels and moles, would surely love a few tasty rats.
So he has to get back. They need to get their stuff. It turns into a bit of a fairly standard sci-fi trope, like invade the village.
I kind of disagree there, because the standard trope would be to disguise themselves and enter the city.
You're not going to disguise a fucking...
Exactly. Like, he can't do it, and neither can she. Well, it should be recognised.
Yeah, absolutely. So there
is no way that they can stealth their way into the city, which is why they require the assistance of the mountain tribe. While I was reading it, I thought it was sort of a delaying tactic on Miss Logston's part, introducing a new civilization that doesn't ultimately contribute too much to the plot. But I think it really allows both Madeline and Ruraf to develop and to show that they both have leadership qualities that are very different and also kind of incompatible with one another. He's the more empathetic, but at the same time also more hierarchical. She's the more determined, but at the same time also more egalitarian.
And surprisingly enough, she's the one who uses her blade to show the fact that she's like diminutive. This is the 80s again.
Hey, in my eyes, Ruraf is 4.5 feet tall. So go ahead, imagine what you want.
He's more like 9.5 feet on the cover. That halberd is clearly one of the mountain tribe weapons.
Because he adapts very easily to that.
Scout. They're selected for being he's sent here with his shipmates.
But he's much more uncomfortable with Madeline and her more urbane ways, despite the fact that she's living out on the frontiers. She's still brought with her literacy and a sense of propriety and order. The mountain tribes, their nomadic nature seems much more compatible to his sensibilities.
Which makes you wonder how his species developed spaceflight.
Perhaps an extension of their own nomadic.
There's no clear scene at the beginning of the book about technobabble in the book about why the shaft is...
None that's translated.
Well...
The few examples of Ruraf's language, they're positioned as if it's swearing. I kind of like to think that it's a little technobabble, that it's a little that he's just trying to explain some terms that he just does not have any equivalence for in Madeline's language.
The hissing and the spitting, it's like it's probably more swearing than technobabble. But I'm talking about the beginning, the actual crash scene.
Yeah.
There's no the gravity compensators are failing or blah blah blah. The description is not from the crew's perspective. It's from the
observed by Madeline and her squirrels. Rest in peace.
Well, and cooked squirrel. I mean, they came in handy when he was hungry. Spacecraft-cooked squirrel. All the rage, except it requires crashing a very expensive scout ship. But you do get that hydrazine burn, which you don't normally get on other squirrels.
Oh, you don't get just a little sizzle.
You don't get that on the grill.
Okay, well, clearly I need to drop by for dinner one of these days. You provide the squirrels, I'll provide the hydrazine.
Ooh, I was going to go the other way around. Okay,
I'll just go hunt some squirrels.
You have a point.
And so does the dagger.
The dagger? No, the dagger's the mountain, remember?
I know, but I was just putting in my bid for the Segue Award of 2018 while it's still...
Okay, so the dagger,
podcast host Segue Award 2018 goes to... No, it's probably not going to be me, but...
we'll see. We have probably 1 or 2 more episodes to record this year, so I can say... I'll admit you're in the lead right now, but...
Oh, thank you! Thank you!
Don't count me out yet.
The titular dagger's point being the tip of the sacred mountain that is inconveniently smashed into by the, I've got to say, dagger-shaped spacecraft.
Yes. But also, they're scouts. The implication is clearly that they're maybe not an invasion force, but they're,
And that would be called the tip of the spear.
Which is another juxtaposition. He wants to get in touch with his people, but... he was sent here to check if this place was habitable and if it was suitable for colonization. His arrival is definitely the point of the dagger.
But I'm not sure that she fully understands.
No, she doesn't. No, absolutely not.
Because she never asks how many of his people there are. She's very compassionate. I mean, outcast as she is, she seems to thrive under it, and I'm sure that it was no great hardship for her to say goodbye.
She's a bit of a Mary Sue in that regard, doing well for herself and don't need my people, don't need those other people.
Yes, of course, it's always a coincidence when two characters happen to meet one another, and of course it's always very convenient that these characters happen to have literary traits that makes them interesting to examine, because that produces drama.
Yes.
But in this case, Madeline, the traditional role of the feminine protagonist in fantasy is very often starting from a desire to leave the status quo. And she doesn't have that. She's already left the status quo that was dissatisfactory. She has a new status quo that she's made for herself that she's entirely satisfied satisfied with. She's exploring. She's not just subsisting on the rim of her civilization.
No, you have a good point.
She's exploring. She's naming things.
Right, and I guess in that case it's a clear similarity with Ruraf, who's also, he's an explorer, he's a scout, but she recognizes that in him, even though she has no idea about the real purpose of his presence, which is the
colonization, habitation. Like there's no numbers involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Well, there's the implications that there's a big organization, or at least a very well organized.
He talks about his clan, but in Earth historical precedent, like a clan could be as few as 50 people. It could be as many as thousands.
Right. So
because it depends on their reproductive cycle, like how many offspring do they throw.
There's no clear implication about how many there are. But
right, when you talk about your family, there is a certain numerical value to that. It's more than 2.
Yeah.
If you're a family, then it's more than 2, but it's probably less than 100 people that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So when Ruraf talks about his clan, he must have a natural idea of how many that is. He was alone on that ship. It might also be just 20 more people on a bigger ship. Pardon me.
Well,
of course, it wasn't the only one. There was Bob, which I love that he had it.
It's like a cheap shot. It's like a lynx.
But you get one of those in a book.
No,
you get one of those.
It's like wing.
And why wouldn't, like, you've got a Ruraf, why wouldn't you have a Bob? Why wouldn't that be a name?
True.
It's certainly been clear to the readers at home how much I, for my part at least, have been enjoying this book. Up until this point, where it takes a serious fucking nosedive into ludicrous territory, when they finally, with the help of the mountain tribes, make it into the
temple
and into the temple held by Mary, where they finally reclaim the gem communicator that has been Ruraf's mission this whole time.
So there's been a spectacular lack of technobabble in the book at this point, until the point that they actually start retrieving this technology, and it turns into this weird,
fucking
almost hippie-like...
Yes, absolute nonsense. He has to place it on his groin chakra,
crystal
which is
alignment thing. It goes completely off the rails.
How it sparkles and what kind of cut it is and how it seems to change. And then fucking Marilyn, who's been this incredible icon of independence, is just captivated by all these pretty jewels.
Oh yeah, she's completely besotted.
She's completely besotted. His 39.5 pecs weren't enough for her, but now that he's got bling...
Which is like, clearly she did not realize at this point that, like, if you take that thing apart, it's a prince's ransom. It also explains the high priest's, like, obsession with it as well. I mean, it was clearly that he was always, like, about the hoarding and the stuff.
You're suggesting that it's sort of like the ring, that it corrupts people around
it. No, absolutely not. No, I'm just saying he's just a flat character who just, like, wants wealth and power.
I thought that there would be more to him, that he would be, like, secretly a scientist under the guise of... No,
it's completely out
none of that.
So Roarth gets the whole thing working up in Madeline's cabin in the woods.
Yes, after they've absconded with the components that he needs.
Yes, to convince the mountain tribes that having sacked the village, they have gotten their part of the bargain, and like
that was the other part
in the carpet.
This was a brutal raid on the town that's now on fire, and it's been utterly decimated. But apparently we're supposed to be fine with it as readers.
Well, maybe Madeline got her revenge on being scorned. A little bit of a fuck you to the village, and like, you kicked me out.
Which would be nice if it had been set up at all. She's never rancorous.
No,
she's disdainful, but it's completely lost me.
So, cue the first scene where the communicator works. Yes. And Ruraf gets in contact with his commander.
StormFangBloodMoon. There's no spaces there. StormFangBloodMoon II, which is apparently his commander, maybe mother. Who cares at this point? This whole time, I've been so excited to learn more about Ruraf's civilization. And then the first thing we learned, half the page is about the throne that she's sitting on and how that works for a tour.
Crystal communications.
The rest is the crystal communications.
It's like a combination between a Shalons and a...
Is there even gravity? Like there's straps. There's certainly space caps. Extra hilarious if you imagine that they're only 4 feet tall, which is still kind of cute. But still utterly disappointing. And so StormFangBloodMoon is the rest of the dagger. Like Ruraf thematically, undoubtedly is the dagger's point as per the title. At this point, and Logston is really piling on the metaphors, because the mountain is also called the dagger, and Madeline carries a. I'm saying it right. Like Madeline carries a.
No, you can see it. It's on the cover. It's the weapon. It's like it's kind of like.
Yeah, she's got that sheath on her.
It's a bit big for a dagger, but it's like dagger.
It's fine. It's not a sword.
The thing that that the hobbits carried was a dagger.
Yeah. Daggers can be big. I mean, at this point, is there anything in the story that isn't a dagger's point?
It's
the metaphors.
Well, the halberd isn't.
I'm sure that if we read it again, there's somewhere that
even more
that Logston tries to allude to it.
So this explains why it was like it was heralded as a trilogy. I think the publisher did a good thing in
justly so
in dropping that, because it was great up until the third act, and it goes completely.
It was so great. I really loved it. Logston was really subverting some common tropes in gender relationships,
and especially the fact that like the reader isn't clearly meant to identify with one or the other.
No, exactly.
Both are obviously non.
I was Team Madeline for most of the first act, and then Team Ruraf the second act, and then Team just finished the goddamn book already in the third act. There was a bit of a guilty pleasure to it as well. I mean, StormFangBloodMoon, her dialogue was so over the top. It was kind of delicious.
Do you think it's like it's Anne's own voice coming out through that?
If there was any Mary Sue in this story, it would have been StormFangBloodMoon. And you kind of get one of the, I hated it so much, but on the other hand, I want to give it to her. But it's like the second chapter of Dune. Hey, there's a book we haven't mentioned before, Frank Herbert's Dune.
The second chapter,
the glowing purple eyes. The second chapter has the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. It starts off with him monologuing, and then, is this not a wonderful thing that I, the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, do? It's a terrible sentence. It's rubbish, and it's kind of fun as well.
Well, it's kind
of. I think that's maybe what she was going for.
Like maybe like on the cover of the head, it looks like it was pulled off and then stuck back on again. It's like I still don't get the whole buff toned chest and the fuzzy. I mean, the fuzzy rest is absolutely adorable, but
absolutely. Down to the little fluffy tail.
There's not much.
No, there's not on. It's not on the screen, but certainly in our mind's eye.
He has to have that cute adorable. I mean, he's
something just occurred to me.
Yeah.
Her sweatband and StormFangBloodMoon's crown with a gem set within it. Do you think there's anything to that? I mean, it would have to be kind of a, like it was described as tiara.
It was clearly not. It was clearly not in the book, but the cover artist might have picked up on that.
What if here's a wild idea. What if we just imagine what the book could have been about? Instead of accurately reviewing what the book was actually about, what if we just went off the cover, and just let our imagination run? No, okay, you're right. I can see
we'd never do that.
No, no one would listen to that.
Nah, this is bullshit.
So thank you for joining us on Cover My Ass, where baffling books are reviewed but not read. My name is Khaki. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I forgot what my name was. But yours truly, my name is Khaki.
And I'm Kay, and remember, only judge a book by its cover.
I think we nailed it. Good job, good podcast.
Yes.